The 148th running of the Preakness Stakes is coming this Saturday and tonight. Here on the channel, we are going to be taking a look at the Preakness field, get you lined up with all 8 horses who have been entered for the Preakness Stakes in 2023. We do have one horse coming back from the Kentucky Derby. That is the winner, Mage. Mage, a 15-1 upset a couple of weeks ago in Louisville. Going to try to continue his quest for the Triple Crown this Saturday in Baltimore. And if you have a question about the Preakness Stakes, make sure to get that in here as we continue to bring you coverage of the Triple Crown 2023. And let's take a look at this field. Of course, the Preakness is going to be Saturday, part of a big card of racing. Friday and Saturday, you have the Black-Eyed Susans, you have the Preakness Stakes, you have some turf racing at Baltimore, and then they close it off with some concerts. But yes, the Preakness Stakes 2023. And the first question of the night, yes, can Mage handle the tight turns of Pimlico? They are tightening those turns as we speak. And of course, the lore of daily racing form over the years, they always talked about the tight turns of Pimlico as horses made the transition from the Kentucky Derby to Baltimore. So that is what we're going to talk about tonight. The pace of the race, the horses in the race, Mage, and also we've got 7 new shooters coming into the Preakness. Now, the first thing I wanted to show you was the winning Beyer Speed Figures for the last 10 years in the Preakness Stakes. Dean Wayne Lucas sent out Oxbow with a 106 speed figure and California Chrome with a 105. American Pharaoh ran a 102. Now, it did rain that day of the race. Exaggerator with a 101, another year with some slop. Cloud Computing with a 102. Justify coming back and running a 97. Swiss Skydiver, that was in September. She beat Authentic in a stretch-long battle. Rombauer with a 102. And then early voting last year, a 105. Now, the reason why that is important is because Mage in the Kentucky Derby picked up a speed figure of 105. Now let's take a look at the post position draw from Monday. National Treasure drew the rail. He is going to be the one horse, 4-1 morning line. Chase the Chaos is listed at 50-1. Mage is number 3 at 8-5 with Javier Castellano. Coffee with Chris with the local jockey, Jamie Rodriguez, 20-1. A little bit of speed with Coffee with Chris. Red Route 1, a big closer. The Truth, Joel Rosario, 10-1. Fergal Lynch for Perform and Shug McGahee, 15-1. Blazing Sevens at 6-1 for Chad Brown, Irad Ortiz. And First Mission, Brad Cox, looking for his first winner in the Preakness Stakes. Luis Saez at 5-2 on First Mission. And that is a look at your Preakness field for 2023. Now, when you take a look at Mage and taking a look at some of the different horses coming into this race, you've got National Treasure for Bob Baffert. You've got Chase the Chaos, who got here qualifying, winning on the synthetic stakes. He won the El Camino Real. And since Golden Gate and Santa Anita and Pimlico all have the same owner, they made that a win and you're in for Chase the Chaos. So that's how he got here. Mage, of course, looking to win that Triple Crown. Did not race as a 2-year-old. Coffee with Chris won the Miracle Wood Stakes, won the Hef Stakes. Red Route 1 won the Bathhouse Stakes the last time out. That was at Oaklawn Park. Then you've got Perform, a winner of the Tessio Stakes for Shug McGahee. Blazing Sevens, he won the Champagne Stakes as a 2-year-old. He also won the first race of his career. And we've also got the First Mission for trainer Brad Cox, who had a couple of starters a couple of years ago in the Preakness Stakes. This will be his second Preakness Stakes. But Mage, a stretch battle with 2 fills, a 105 Beyer in the Kentucky Derby. And the big question with Mage is that 105 Beyer speed figure, which basically would have won the Preakness Stakes about 3 or 4 times in the last 10 years. So when you look at it on paper, I don't think Mage needs to improve here. If he can run a 102 or a 103 Beyer speed figure or a 101 or 102 Brisnet speed figure, that is good enough to win the Preakness Stakes. The question is First Mission, who got a 98 Beyer speed figure the last time, can he improve a little bit? He only has 3 lifetime races. And then you've got a horse like National Treasure, who has a 95, but he did that as a 2-year-old and hasn't really progressed off that number as a 3-year-old. Now, interestingly enough, if you go back to his 2-year-old form, even Blazing Sevens has a 93. He comes in off a 90 Beyer speed figure in the Bluegrass Stakes in his most recent. So we're going to have to see what happens here with Mage. But again, I think, going into the Derby, we thought that you had to improve to win the Derby, and Mage improved by almost 7 or 8 speed points in that race. In fact, the second, third, and fourth place finishers, along with 2 fills and Disarm, they all improved in the Kentucky Derby, even though they lost. So Mage, if he can get here at that 100 level, that's probably good enough to win the Preakness Stakes. So the 100 Beyer speed figure, Vince, only one horse has done that. That is Mage. We'll be taking a look at the Beyer speed figures, the rest of the field, but he's the only one that's broken the 100. So that pretty much puts him kind of at a little bit higher level than some of these other horses. So only one horse has broken the 100 Beyer speed figure coming into the Preakness Stakes. Now, basically, Mage got good numbers all the way around. Time Form gave him a 124, Equibase a 102, and the Ragozin sheets, which accounts for how wide he ran and the wind of the day, that come back a 6 1/4. His Thorograph number was a 0, which usually right around 1 or a 0 will put you in company. And, same thing there. He wants to try to repeat that 0 Thorograph number. So question we've got from Paul V. He liked how Red Route 1 is improving. I'm betting him win place. Last year, Epicenter ran second in the Preakness. Steve Asmussen, he usually likes to run his horses in the Preakness Stakes. He's one of the few trainers that'll wheel him back. So it's good to see a horse like Red Route 1, who prepped at Oaklawn in his last race. Remember, he did not have enough points when they were taking entries to get into the Derby. As it worked out, we had all of the scratches the week of the race. So Red Route 1 could have probably made it into the Kentucky Derby if he would have pre-entered. So overall, Mage looks good on all of the different speed figures. Now, the big question for Mage is the 2-week turnaround, and it's his 5th career race. All of his races have been this year. Is there anybody that thinks Mage may be able to run back to that race? Or what are some of the opinions with Mage? Derby Knowledge says, don't turn the page, stick with Mage. So he's riding it out with Mage. The one thing is I do think the Preakness Stakes is a little bit top heavy. I think the top 4 favorites here are going to win this race. Now, that's half the field, but I just don't see any way any of these outsiders can win. I'm sticking with Blazing Sevens, National Treasure, Mage, and also, First Mission. I do like Perform maybe to get second in the Exacta. I do think he's probably sitting on a career best effort. His last race, he broke a little bit slow. He ran against Mage in his maiden race at Gulfstream, picked up a win in his maiden race, and then came back with a stakes win. So he's maybe improving, but it did take 6 starts to break his maiden. Thanks a lot for the support, Danny. Danny, one of our regular followers. Perform, yes, we'll talk more about Perform. But the thing about Perform is I showed that video in my video handicapping the Preakness, how he went inside and outside of horses. And I was impressed with the move like that because it shows me that he is quickly improving. And that's what we saw what happened in the Derby. We saw 4 horses run a career high Beyer speed figure in the Kentucky Derby, the top 4 horses. And I don't think Mage will run a career top in the Preakness, but I do think a horse like Perform could run a career best. I think maybe National Treasure could run a career best. And then I think the lightly raced First Mission could run the first best. Now, we'll talk more about Perform as we get to him, Danny, but let's go through the pace projector. Now, this was one of the things that we talked a lot about going into the Derby, and I got that wrong. I thought there was no way that we would have a fast pace in the Derby. Now, the pace projector from Timeform did predict a fast pace. Now, the only thing is they had Derma Sotogake as the pace setter, and it actually ended up being verifying along with Kingsbarn setting the pace. But they did have a fast pace. Now, in this race, Timeform is saying that we're going to have a moderate pace, and they're projecting basically on the lead out there could be Coffee with Chris. Then you've got National Treasure, and then you've got a horse like First Mission. Now, I don't think that we're going to have a fast pace again, but I don't know. It seems like on these big days, we get these jockeys. And one of the things I think why we're getting these fast paces back-to-back years in the Derby is because I think these jockeys are trying to get out of the gate so they don't have any traffic issues, and that's causing that opening quarter to be really fast. So Derby Knowledge says the Triple Crown has been very tough for many decades. This is nothing new. I agree with that. That's been a topic of conversation. Should they change the Triple Crown? Should they put more weeks between the race? I do think the Triple Crown has its schedule, but I think we need to find a way to get more horses pointing for the Preakness. If the horses from the Derby are not going to come and run in the Preakness, then we need to find a couple of more win-in-we're-ins, maybe get a couple of, maybe, the week before the Derby, Oaklawn has the Bathhouse, maybe another prep in New York, try to get somebody out of the Wood. But it seems like you get the winner of the Wood, or maybe two horses from the Wood go to the Derby. Maybe we can get one of the third place finisher expenses paid too. So what do you think of the pace of the race? Do you think there is going to be, now this is a good question. When was the last time the Preakness only had the Derby winner run back? I think somebody mentioned on Kentucky, the Courier Journal tweeted that it's been since 1948, only one horse from the Derby has come back and ran in the Preakness. So this is a little bit unusual, only having one horse from the Derby to the Preakness. But new shooters seem to be doing a little bit well. The answer to this question, can they use Lasix in this race? That answer is no. They cannot use Lasix, Jaco, for the Preakness or the Belmont or the Kentucky Derby. Now, somebody says maybe the Inside Speed. That could be a horse like National Treasure. The one thing with National Treasure is he does get blinkers. And we've seen horses in the past. Palace Malice got blinkers in the Kentucky Derby a few years back. In the Orb Derby, set some fast fractions. Do we think the new gate has impacted the early pace of the Derby? Maybe. You've got 17 horses in one gate, whereas before you'd have two gates. But it does give them more room. I don't know. It's back-to-back years we've had fat. Here's another thing. Everybody's been talking about the Derby pace the last 2 years. The Oaks pace has been fast both years as well. So it's something that I'm keeping an eye on as we start handicapping next year's Oaks and Derby. I just have to put more time into the pace because that's basically where I got the race wrong this year. I just did not have a fast pace. I did think Verifying could be up there. I thought Kingsbarn could be up there. But Mage ran wide, and Mage was in the top 5 coming into the stretch. So he had enough speed, kind of like his Florida Derby run, to get position to get up on that pace. So Mage ran a good race in the Kentucky Derby. I didn't have him, but I do think that he ran a good race, and he got involved in the race early. So Jocko Man says he thinks the track is set up to make records, and they manipulate it, producing faster splits. That could be true. I guess, I don't know. I guess if you were there that day and they had a little bit of rain on Saturday morning, it was kind of dry the rest of the week. So possibility. That opening quarter was sub 23. That is fast going a mile and a quarter. And then under 46 was fast going the half mile. So it was just a fast pace both years. Anthony says National Treasure is going out on top and going to try to steal it on the lead. I think it's possible. Maybe him or First Mission. John Velazquez does well in the big races on the big days on the lead. Luis Saez also does well with speed horses. So I think Louis riding First Mission could dictate a little bit of that pace. Another one says you don't want to come from too far back on the track, especially if there's moisture in the track. Yeah, I would say overall, the Preakness, you want to be closer at that half mile pole. And some days I've noticed over the last few years is that sometimes the inside does not, we see horses make sweeping moves. So you don't want to be at that rail. So that's one thing you want to look on Friday and Saturday, especially in the Sir Barton. You want to take a look at the Black-Eyed Susans. Sometimes it sets up so you get those wide sweeping moves coming into the turn. So let's talk about National Treasure. Bob Baffert back in the game here in the Triple Crown. A chance to set the pace. He does get blinkers. He's number one. He is trained by Bob Baffert. And you do have John Velazquez. Now, John Velazquez is 0 for 12 in the Preakness Stakes. He has 3 second-place finishes, including second place with Authentic. So that'll be interesting. The California shippers haven't been good this year. They have been a little bit step behind. That worries me a little bit with Feza on Friday and the Black-Eyed Susans. I guess I wouldn't want to take too low of a price. To me, if National Treasure is 4-1, I think that's a solid angle on National Treasure. A horse like that, you can get maybe a $20, $30, $40 double. I wouldn't want to take 5-2. Yes, Baffert did get National Treasure back right after the Santa Anita Derby. So he's been training him. He's got a 47-2 workout last Friday. The week before, he went 6 furlongs in 111. He's got a 6 furlong workout in 112. He's worked out on April 29th, May 6th, and May 12th. He seems to be ready to run his best race, but National Treasure has not won since September 3rd. Now, he did run in the Del Mar Futurity, the American Pharoah Stakes, a grade 1. He ran second to Cave Rock, and Cave Rock was one of the better 2-year-olds. And then he ran third in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile to Cave Rock and Forte. Now, we'll never know how good Forte would have been in the Derby because he got scratched out of there. Maybe he'll run in the Belmont. I guess we don't know. So let's see what happens with National Treasure. Coffee with Chris, the Miraclewood Stakes. What I like about Coffee with Chris is he's got a little bit of speed. I think he can hang close in this race, and that may be good enough for Coffee with Chris. In the past, some of these local horses have done well in that exacta and trifecta spot. The local horses have completed some big exactas and trifectas. So that's where you may want to take a look at like Coffee with Chris or a horse like Perform, because, those horses are on the rise. They're sharp. At least they're coming in off victories. Coffee with Chris at least has multiple wins, whereas a horse like National Treasure doesn't have a win since his debut. A horse like Blazing Sevens doesn't have a win since the Champagne Stakes. And whenever it gets to be a long time between wins, it just gets to add a little bit of a handicapping variable for handicappers. So one of the things I like to do is always take a look at the local jocks and kind of see if they can fit into that pace profile. Again, I don't think we're going to have, with only an 8-horse field, one of the things just to keep in mind, whenever you have a bigger field, you have a chance of getting a faster pace. Now, you could still get a contested pace. So a contested pace is when horses are battling on the front end, like Verifying and King's Barnes. So that was contested in the Derby, but they also went fast. Now, if horses are side by side and they're going slower, it's a contested pace, but it's not a fast pace. So that's a little bit of a difference. So I like to look to see if they're going fast and they're contested, or if they're just going fast. So Coffee with Chris. Another question is, can you see First Mission on the lead? National Treasure is not a real pace setter. Well, I think what Siggy is talking about there is we've got a bunch of horses. Somebody's going to have to go to the lead. Now, if you remember right, in Mage's maiden race back in Gulfstream Park, he went to the lead. And I think going into his second race, people thought he might be a front runner. But then he broke slow in the Fountain of Youth, and he made a move going wide. Then in the Florida Derby, he broke slow. Then in the Kentucky Derby, it was a fast pace and a big field. So I think what Siggy's asking is we really don't have a proven front runner. So National Treasure may not go to the lead, but he did get the one post, and he does have blinkers, and he does have a jockey that likes to go to the lead in John Velazquez. So maybe First Mission could go to the lead because Luis Saez does like to send his horses. But if you look at the raw pace ratings, First Mission does not have the same pace ratings that some of these other horses have. In fact, Mage in his maiden race is faster on the pace scale than some of these horses. So John Bravo says that track is not kind to closers. Last year, early voting won, even though he wasn't really a distance horse. Yeah, he never really progressed from his Preakness race. He had some bad Jim Dandy. He had a bad Travers and basically never won again. That was kind of his last hurrah. And if you noticed, Chad Brown's other Preakness winner, Cloud Computing, he never won after the Preakness Stakes. So he kind of got both those horses ready to win the Preakness, and then neither one ever won again. Now, Blazing Sevens did have the points to run in the Kentucky Derby, and they elected to pass on the Kentucky Derby. They could have ran in there. They decided to wait to run in the Preakness Stakes. So I think they made the right decision. It's a big purse, and they've got 2 extra weeks to get ready. It's an 8-horse field versus an 18-horse field, so not a bad decision for Chad Brown. Now, Jocko Man says the Derby horses usually do well running back because they have a foundation. They know a lot of people that someone new on the scene is going to mow them down. That usually doesn't happen. So I think there is some quality about running in the Derby. I do think the better horses run in the Derby than the Preakness. So that's good. Epicenter, he broke a little bit slow last year. And then remember, Joel Rosario was kind of criticized for that ride. They thought he laid back. But Joel Rosario said that Epicenter didn't have the gas to go with him. So he might have been a little bit tired after running near that fast pace in the Derby last year, because Epicenter ran fast in the Derby and then turned around and came back on a couple of weeks rest. So Loso said Chad Brown's not chipping in for the crab cakes. I believe with that, Chad Brown seems to point for that Preakness Stakes. Fast workouts plus blinkers tells me that National Treasure is going to the lead. That's what Derby Knowledge says. And I think that's probably most likely pace setter. But if the fractions are a little bit slower, maybe First Mission. If they're really slow, possibly Coffee with Chris. So that is a look at Coffee with Chris. Chase the Chaos comes in. He got in winning the El Camino Real. That was on the synthetic. Now we saw last week, 2 fills ran really well coming in off the synthetic. The difference is he was by hard spun, a traditional dirt sire, and hard spun ran second in the Kentucky Derby. And he had a couple of dirt wins, one at Canterbury, one at Colonial Downs. So Chase the Chaos needs to improve. His best races have been on the synthetic, and he lost in the San Felipe by 16 lengths in the San Felipe. And then he did run at Canterbury last year. We've got another Canterbury horse, but he did run on the turf. And then he did run second on the dirt at Canterbury last year. So the Triple Crown loaded with the prides of Canterbury. So Chase the Chaos, going to be a long shot, 50-1 on the morning line. So Chad Brown, 2 Preakness wins, Cloud Computing and Early Voting. Early Voting never won again. Cloud Computing never run again. Blazing Sevens won at Saratoga, and then he won the Champagne. The Champagne was in the slop, so I always question whether they can come back. He didn't really run at all at Fountain of Youth, so we'll see what he does here. It should be noted he got a 90 speed figure in the Bluegrass, and that puts him in the mix here speed figure-wise if he can just improve a little bit about that. Interesting, 6 fillies and mares. We've got only Perform and Perform is coming in with the Tessio winner. I thought maybe we'd get a couple of other horses from the Prides of Maryland, but we didn't get that. Also, I think there's some fillies. Maybe a few in, Dreaming of Julia passed on both the Black Eyed Susans and the Preakness. And Todd Pletcher's run fillies against the boys in the past. He's ran them in the Derby. Also, we've had a Swiss Skydiver win the Preakness Stakes a few years back. Even Ken McPeak has been aggressive running the fillies against the boys here. Secret Oath ran in the Preakness last year for D. Wayne Lucas. So with this 8-horse field, it would have been nice to see maybe a strong filly in there. Last year, Secret Oath couldn't catch Early Voting either, although I think she was a little bit over the top after running on Oaks Day. Then she ran against the boys in the Arkansas Derby. Then she ran against the boys in the Preakness. So she may have been a little bit over the top with last year. Now, what's interesting, look at this stat. So the jockeys in the Preakness Stakes are a combined 1 for 38 in the Preakness. Javier Castellano is 1 for 9. He won the 2017 Preakness with Cloud Computing. Fergal Lynch is his first Preakness mount. Irad Ortiz is riding Blazing Sevens. He's 0 for 4. Jamie Rodriguez is riding in his first Preakness. John Velazquez is 0 for 12 in the Preakness. Now remember, Javier Castellano was 0 for 15 going into the Kentucky Derby this year. This was his first Derby win. Joel Rosario is 0 for 8. So some good jockeys with some 0-fers in the Preakness. Sheldon Russell 0 for 2, and Luis Saez is 0 for 3. So Jocko Man says, good job with these Triple Crown races. Yes, thanks for watching. Again, if you're watching, everybody smash that like button. What that does is it tells YouTube to feed this into more people's channels. It allows more people to find out about the live streams and gets us more live streams on these big days, because we need to get people watching them. Otherwise, I can just sit and talk to my horse racing buddies at Canterbury. Really, you guys all watching and asking the questions, that's what keeps the live streams going. Thanks again for Danny for her support on the live stream. So support the channel with a thanks. Smash that like button. And we've got some more notes. I think the Belmont will get our 9 or 10 horse field. Hopefully, I think we've got hit show pointing, possibility of verifying, maybe Forte if he gets off the vets list. So interesting. Does anybody think about this jockey stat? John Velazquez 0 for 12. Irad Ortiz riding Blazing Sevens 6-1 on a Chad Brown with Irad Ortiz. What do you think about that? Do you think that could happen? Anthony says Mage is not going to hit the board. I don't know if I'd be that bold, but if you bet it that way, you can make some money. Danny's talking about the dull rail. So this is one of those things that started maybe 10, 12 years ago. I used to hear about it, a dull rail on the big days on the Preakness card. And I started watching the races, and the first few years I'd kind of notice it. And this really is one of those things, the tight turns things we joke about, because it's really just a narrower track. The turns aren't any tighter. It's just not as wide as Churchill Downs, but the turns aren't really any tighter. But the dull rail does seem to be a real thing. It does seem like that you can get on some of these big days on the Preakness undercard, the rail can be not the place to be. You'll see jockeys literally riding off the rail. When you watch the head-on replays, you'll see them 10 to 12 feet out in the middle of the track. So that's something to watch. I will watch the replays on Friday. Maybe make a note of that. watch some of the replays, see where they're at. It's just kind of like on these turf days when they have the rails out on the turf course. One of the things I like to watch is where are the jockeys riding? The jockeys tend to know where not to ride on these big days. And so we'll see what happens there with these jockeys. But I just thought it was kind of interesting. The jockeys 1 for 38 coming into this Preakness with Javier Castellano, the only winning jockey. So here we are. Somebody asked about the fastest Beyer Speed Figures. We are at Mage with a 105 in the Kentucky Derby, First Mission with a 98 in the Lexington, National Treasure with a 95 as a 2-year-old, and then you've got Red Route 1 with a 92, and then Blazing Sevens with a 90 in the Bluegrass, and then Coffee with Chris. So normally, like I say, I'm looking for about a 5 to 6 length disparity in the speed figures. So on speed figures for Beyer, you know, even if Mage goes back to like a 102 or a 103, he's still fast in this Derby. Yes, Johnny V, a little bit surprised about the Preakness. National Treasure and First Mission going to be fighting to the end. I think they're going to slow the pace or just stalk the rabbit and take over. Could possibly happen. So that's where the speed figures are. I think Mage is the fastest horse. The big question is, can he run a 100 speed figure on 2 weeks rest? So that's really my only question. I think he's good. He's got the class. He ran second to Forte in the Florida Derby. Huge move. Looked like he was going to win that race. I think if Mage wins that Florida Derby, he's probably a 7 or 8 to 1. And I probably would have included Mage. I just didn't know what to do with him, not running as a 2-year-old. I thought Forte was a good horse. Once they scratched some of those other contenders, Mage kind of figured in that race. Blazing Sevens, a maiden win in the debut, a grade 1 win in the Champagne Stakes, and KM says he's going to single Mage in the doubles and pick 3s. So Blazing Sevens for Chad Brown, 6 to 1, Irad Ortiz. Now, the trainers in this race, Bob Baffert is tied for the all-time lead with 7 Preakness wins. He got Silver Charm in 97, Real Quiet in 98, Point Given in 2001, War Emblem in 2002. Now, looking at Lucky and Point Given, they did not win the Derby. The rest of them won the Derby. So looking at Lucky had the 1 post position in the Derby and then came back and won the Preakness. And then Point Given got hooked and cooked in a pace duel in the Derby. And then he came back and won the Preakness and then blew him away in the Belmont Stakes that year. So Bob Baffert going for the all-time record with 8 Preakness wins. So yes, the Baffert Stakes, according to John Bravo. So let's go to Red Route 1. Now he's got a turf win, and then he won his last race. So 2 lifetime wins for Red Route 1. Anybody liking Red Route 1? My big problem with Red Route 1 is he's always about 10 to 15 lengths behind. They've tried putting blinkers on him. They've tried having him run closer to the pace. The slot really didn't seem to help him. I thought his worst race was probably the Rebel when he ran second to Confidence Game in the slop. I just thought he never picked it up, never really got going until late in the race. So Red Route 1, turf win, won the Bathhouse Stakes. He's 10 to 1 on the morning line. Now you've got First Mission, the Lexington Stakes winner, also won his second lifetime race by 8 lengths at the fairgrounds. And then he lost to Bishop's Bay in his first race, going 6 furlongs. Now, what was interesting about that race, he was flying at the end of that race and lost by a head bob. Bishop's Bay ran last week in the Peter Pan. He lost by a head bob to Arcangelo, who may be running in the Belmont Stakes. But Bishop's Bay is trained by Brad Cox. He elected to run him in the Peter Pan. First Mission here in the Lexington Stakes. First Mission's had 3 good workouts since the Lexington win. Brad Cox seems to be talking very high about this horse ever since he won this race. Danny says, I like Red Route 1, but the distance is shorter than the Derby. With him being a late closer, it'll be hard for him. That's my main concern. He always seems to be rolling late, Maybe I can use him for second and third, but I just can't put him in my doubles. I can't put him in my pick threes. I'm not sure I'm going to be playing a pick four on Preakness Day, but my doubles and pick threes are going to focus in on horses I think can win. And I even like Perform more than Red Route 1, just because I think he's improving and he's got a little bit more tactical speed. So First Mission, definitely. Paul V says Red Route 1 is going to hit the Exacta. So that's his prediction for Red Route 1. Don't forget, now Perform here, I want to talk about him. You know, he's supplemented for $150,000. That means they did not pre-nominate him. So if you pay a pre-nomination, it's only a couple $1,000s to get into the race. But since they did not pre-nominate him, they're literally paying $150,000 out of their own money to get in this race. Now, he won his last two races. He won at the Tessio Stakes in the last stride. Good distance breeding. Now, there's three Good Magics in this race. Now, Good Magic is by Curlin, and Curlin ran in the Kentucky Derby. He did not run as a 2-year-old, but he ran third in the Kentucky Derby. He ran in the Preakness, and he ran in the Belmont. Then Good Magic was by Curlin. He ran second to Justify in the Kentucky Derby, and this is his first crop of horses. Perform is by Good Magic. Blazing Sevens is by Good Magic. And Mage is by Good Magic. So 3 of these 8 horses are the same sire, Good Magic, and he's by Curlin, and those horses usually get good as the distances get longer, and they usually develop later in their 3-year-old seasons. So definitely a chance for Perform here. I like the fact that Shug McGay, he seems to be really high on this horse. And Shug McGay, he's usually not very confident, but he did say this horse had his best workout in this race. So good question on Perform by Danny on what I think about Perform. I definitely think he's a horse you can use in the trifectas. I'm going to be using him in a couple of Black-Eyed Susan Preakness doubles. I'm going to be doing a video later on this week updating the speed ratings for all the Derby horses, and then some Black-Eyed Susan bets. That'll either come out tomorrow or Thursday if you want to watch that for some Black-Eyed Susans and Preakness daily double bets. So Arthur Wheeler likes Red Route 1. I don't know. Dylan could be running away with it, but we got to see. JPGP is the cheap speed of the league this year. You've got Arthur Wheeler. He likes Red Route 1 because of his sire, Gunrunner the sire. We'll see what happens here. And then we've got the jockeys, Cloud Computing, John Velazquez, 0 for 12. And my selection, in case you haven't watched my Preakness preview, my official prediction is First Mission. I debated long and hard between First Mission and National Treasure. I'm going to be playing First Mission and Exactas over National Treasure, Mage, Perform, and Blazing Sevens. Now, if you like Mage, I would say play Mage over Perform, Blazing Sevens, and National Treasure. Now, the reason why I say First Mission can win but not run second is because I like him with a slower fractions and not a lot of pace pressure. If he does not get the slower fractions and National Treasure goes to the lead, I don't think First Mission's going to win. So I'm going to be playing First Mission as a potential pace setter with slow fractions. Now, sometimes people don't. So what I'm saying is sometimes I like horses to win, but only with a certain running style. So like, that's why when I say I don't like Red Route 1 on top of the Exacta, but like he's a horse you can use in second or third, I just would never play him in a daily double. So I factor in running styles for some of my bets. So horses that I think can run second and third, I might play in the Exacta. But if I don't think they can win, then I won't play them in a daily double or a pick 3 or on a win bet. So I won't be playing Red Route 1 on a win bet. I probably won't be playing Blazing Sevens on a win bet, but I will play him in an Exacta. So just a different style of betting. I try to incorporate pace and race flow into how I think the race will run out. Some people just go with the speed figures. To me, I like to look at how they got that speed figure. I like to incorporate where they're going to be on the racetrack coming in there. So that is just how I handicap on some of the different things. Remember, Morning Lion again, National Treasure 4-1, Chase the Chaos 50-1, Mage 8-5, Coffee with Chris 20-1, Red Route 1 10-1, Perform 15-1, Blazing Sevens 6-1. Now, what I like about Blazing Sevens, Danny, really there's three things. If you're going to bet Blazing Sevens in this race, here's three reasons why you would play him. One, Chad Brown has 2 Preakness wins in the last 6 years. Both times those horses were not favored. Both times he passed on the Preakness Derby to run the Preakness. So he's taken advantage of a small field. He's got a couple of extra weeks of training in, and he likes to get a fresh horse for the Preakness. So Blazing Sevens is fresh for the Preakness. He's had back-to-back workouts the last 2 weekends, and he gets a smaller field. And he does have a 90 speed figure, and I think the best prep of the season in the Bluegrass. I thought Tapit Trice and Verifying ran very well in the Bluegrass. They didn't run well in the Derby, but that's a whole nother story. So that's why you would like Blazing Sevens. I think Blazing Sevens is going to run a 97 or 98 Beyer speed figure. The problem is I think Mage is probably going to run a 101 or a 100. So you've got to hope that Mage can't run a 100 on the 2-week turnaround. If you don't think Mage is going to run a 100, then you can play a horse like Blazing Sevens or even First Mission. But if you think he's going to run 100 Mage, then it's kind of hard to play Blazing Sevens. So, yeah, I think Blazing Sevens is training sharp, but he needs to improve. That's the key. Now, that's one of the things. If you're looking for long shots, then you've got to look for a horse that can improve. And what I mean by that is Mage was 15-1 in the Derby. I always call it the wedding and the funeral. If you didn't go to the wedding, you don't go to the funeral. So if you didn't get the 15-1 on Mage, you can bet all the money you want on him in the Preakness at 8-5, but you missed the 15-1. And I missed the 15-1. I wish I'd have had him in the Derby, but I didn't get him. So I just start with a clean slate, and I can play a horse like Mage, but I would rather play an Exacta and try to get maybe $12, $14, $18 Exacta and try to get 7 or 8-1 on my money, or play a double and try to get the Black Eyed Susan Preakness double. So I'm always trying to get 5 or 6-1 on either doubles or Exactas, or I try to key him in a double or a pick 3. That's my main strategy on wagering. Also, I'm always trying to get a horse that maybe can improve a little bit. So my main thing with Mages is I just don't think he can improve here in the Preakness, but he can win the Preakness because we don't know if Blazing Sevens might only run a 93. National Treasure just may not be good enough. He hasn't won since September. Perform is getting a little bit better, but he might only be able to run a 95. So Mage might just win this race by 2 to 3 lengths. So we've got 100 people on here right now. Let's start giving your opinions on the Derby. So, I mean, on the Preakness. So I think Mage is plenty in the tank. Huge gallop out, lightly raced. Loso likes Mage. Paul V likes Red Route 1. Perform and Mage is the only horses with wins at 1.1 miles or longer on the dirt. The Exacta will be Mage and Red Route 1. So let's get your pick on the race. Acid test for First Mission. I definitely agree with that. Let's get some of your opinions here on the Preakness. Who do you think is going to be the speed of the race? Who do you think can win the Preakness? Or give me your Exacta box. Give me 2 horses to box in the Exacta. My box would be First Mission with Mage would be my number 1 box. But then I'd also play First Mission with Perform as a possible Exacta box. So Johnny Bravo says he likes Mage even if Forte ran in the Derby. Not sure about this race. Depends on the break. There's a small chance of some rain Saturday at Pimlico. Los says Bob will go to the lead. If you're definitely taking Mage, then you got the Chalk Lover. Call me crazy, but I'm going to try and catch the Golden Gate Field Shipper in the try. Yes, Chase the Chaos. I think if you can get one horse into the trifecta, you can win some money here, whether it's Perform. Even in that Derby with Two Phil's second and then the favorite third, that trifecta paid. Now, granted, that was 18 horses. You got $450. So I think, you can still get 20 or 30 to 1 with this trifecta if you can narrow it down to a couple of horses to win, a couple of horses to run second, and then maybe 2 or 3 horses in that third spot, either using Chase the Chaos, Perform, or even a horse like, if you can get Chase the Chaos or Perform in that trifecta, or you get National Treasure out and Blazing Sevens in, you can still win a little bit of money on this trifecta. So somebody else says he's playing the Baffert, Black Eyed Susan, Preakness double for Vince. So yes, lots of different ways you can go on the double. I'm going to be lining up my Black Eyed Susan Preakness double bets in my video later on this week. Going to probably play about 3 horses in the Black Eyed Susan. One of the horses, FaZe is undefeated, but she's been facing some weaker horses out west. So I like some of the East Coast based horses. I think a horse like Merlaza is playable in the Black Eyed Susan. You could maybe go with a horse like Miracle for Todd Pletcher, ran against Pretty Mischievous down at the fairgrounds. So there's some good horses, some big fields coming up on Friday. And then Saturday, you've got the Sir Barton Stakes. You've got the Pimlico Special, which used to be a big race as part of the Pimlico weekend. Of course, lots of pick fives, 12 pick fives over the 2 days, lots of action. I'm going to try to stick with some doubles and pick threes. Anybody else playing a Black Eyed Susan Preakness double on Friday and Saturday? John says, good luck, everybody, on Saturday. All right, everybody, we went over the Preakness field. We've got your prediction. Remember, leave a comment. Who will wear the Black Eyed Susan? Hit that like button. We'll come back and recap it. I may do a Friday video on some of the other stakes races for Saturday. We'll see about that. Thanks for your support. Remember, smash that like button. Hit that like button. Share this video with your friends as we get you ready for the Preakness Stakes 2023, the tight turns of Pimlico at Old Hilltop. Good luck, everybody. Enjoy the Preakness. We've got some more videos coming up with updates throughout the week. And then Saturday, we've got Preakness. And again, Danny, for watching and the support. Circle the Drain and the James W. Murphy. And let's see if we're getting the tight turns on Saturday. We'll recap it all Saturday, the Preakness Stakes 2023.